Welcome to Let's Thrive Postpartum.
Welcome back to Let's Thrive Postpartum. I'm Kelly.
I'm Ashley.
And I know we say it every week, but we're really excited for you to hear today's podcast. This is a topic that is near and dear to me and Ashley's heart, but also likely every single person who is listening, and that is sleep. Sleep for our child, sleep for us. How do we get more of it? How do we support our child's sleep so we sleep? So today we have an expert on. Rosalie is a pediatric sleep consultant and registered nurse in Vancouver, British Columbia, with more than 10 years of experience as an RN and nearly 3 years in the sleep consultant field. She is on a mission to shift the narrative around parenthood, because being a parent doesn't mean years of sleep deprivation. She's committed to helping families improve their sleep and well being. She's also the founder of Plume Sleep. So, outside of work, she loves traveling with her husband and 2 children and is recently taking up surfing as a new family adventure. This is just a great conversation.
Yeah, I know. I really, really enjoyed this one. And I think, she's so encouraging and positive, and she's going to go over and just talk about some of the ways she works with families that is all about creating a plan and goals that are specific to your family. So, no more of this you trying these different things that were designed for someone else's baby, or people thinking that there's one method that's going to work for every baby out there. She really works with families individually to find something that feels good for them and is helping everyone in the house get more sleep, which I really love. She talks about some common misconceptions around sleep with, things that we're thinking should be happening or supposed to be happening at a certain time, and how she kind of gently encourages parents to reframe some of that. It's really wonderful. It's a lot of the same work that like I do with a therapist, and that Kelly, like we talk with moms about all the time. And so I think a lot of these strategies are applicable to so many parts of parenthood, motherhood. It was just really wonderful. So I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Hi, Rosalie. Thank you so much for joining Kelly and I today. We are so excited to have you here.
Hello, thank you guys so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be here as well.
So, to get us started, we're going to be talking about a topic here that is near and dear to every single parent in the
Mhm.
entire universe's hearts, which is sleep.
Or the lack thereof.
Or the lack thereof, yes, more importantly. Could you share a little bit about Plume Sleep? Like, why did you start it? What are your goals? Like, what were your motivations?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so a little bit of background on me before we get to the Plume Sleep side of things. I have been a registered nurse for over 10 years. A lot of my background was in health management and behavior change for adults and folks of all ages. Um, as I was going through my nursing career, I met my husband, we had a couple of children, and I went through my own kind of postpartum period. My kids are now 6 and 4 years old. But when they were born, sleep was something that we struggled with a ton. It was something that I wasn't expecting. And I'm sure you guys can probably relate. Parenthood is really, really hard to prepare for. And I
It
felt like
is.
for me, yeah, right? I felt like I just didn't get it until I was in it.
Mhm.
And so I tried, yeah, I see a lot of nodding.
There's a lot of head noddings. If you can't
Yeah.
see us, but there's a lot of head noddings happening right now.
I felt like I really tried to prepare and to educate myself around different things. I'll be honest, sleep wasn't really on my forefront. I kind of thought, hey, there's this narrative around sleep that when you go into parenthood, well, we're just not going to sleep for 18 years. And that's what it is. And so actually that's one of the grounding pillars where I want to shift that narrative that parenthood does not need to mean months or years of sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
So I went into it thinking that this is just how it's supposed to be. And I didn't have a good understanding of a newborn sleep needs, infant sleep needs, toddler sleep needs, how to navigate them. And so we really muddled through, and it really impacted my postpartum period. I am someone who is very stubborn, and I did not want to seek for help because I felt I should be able to figure this out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you two
Mhm.
experience this at all, but a lot of parents I speak with also have that notion on them. I don't know. What do you guys think?
We're
Did
of the
you?
stubborn mamas club. So
Yeah, are you? I love it.
Same, but for sleep, I was clueless. I was Googling everything, how I didn't know there was sleep when all the things I had no idea what I was
Yeah,
doing.
yeah,
yeah,
Clueless.
yeah,
yeah. It really is a space that is so it's like a new language when you get into it and you have to learn it, right? So with our first, we struggled through. We figured things out at about 5 months, and with our second, I was like, awesome. We know what to do. We've got this. We're gonna sleep this time around. Oh, she was infinitely different, and it was infinitely worse. And we struggled through for 10 months without sleep. And one of my biggest regrets looking back on my postpartum period is not getting help sooner. Because I think had I reached out for help, I know I would have gotten more sleep. I know my kids would have been sleeping better. I know that would have improved my mental health. It would have improved my relationships with my kids and my husband. Sleep is a foundation of health, and it is so important for parents in that postpartum period. So back to your original question about how I got into this field of work, it's really from my kids and my struggles combined with my background in nursing and seeing how important sleep is to our overall health. And it's actually one day we were at the park with our kids and we met a dad. And the dad, we're chatting with him, and he says, my mother in law just gave us the very best gift in the world. And my husband and I were like, what? What is it? And he was like, a sleep consultant. And he was just like, it has changed our lives. And so that's when I thought, hey, I can really tie in my nursing background and my experience as a mom to help families. And so that's really what led to Plume Sleep and where I am today.
And it's such a great story. And Rosalie, it is so needed. I think I would probably second what that dad was saying. That is something I wish I had have known, which what we have would have done. Because that first little bit, I was so confused and going down the social media rabbit hole of all the things, the information overload of what you should and should not do. To have a sleep coach to work with you individually is such an amazing gift for parents and for the
yeah,
baby.
yeah. And I know, and I think the thing is too, I mean, we know that lack of sleep is a big contributing factor for postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. It also, though, if you already have anxiety and that kind of thing, it then is going to fuel you not to sleep.
Mhm.
And then you get anxious because you're not sleeping. And it ends up,
Yes.
you go into this downward spiral so quickly. And I know for myself, my husband finally at one point was like, you have to sleep. I was like nauseous. I mean, you get these physical
Yeah.
symptoms when you're not sleeping because your brain is like, I don't know how to operate anymore and function and run the rest of your body. And he was like, "You have got to sleep. Like, go in the other room." And I was like, "I can't. If I hear him, I
Yeah.
am just." And he was like, "Get the noise canceling headphones. Turn up." I listen to Enya like on all the time. He was like, "Turn up Enya as loud as you can, and I don't care what you have to do, but like you have to sleep." And our son was we struggled for a while with him, like getting him to sleep. And similar to your kids, we got it figured out. Second one came along. I was like, okay, cool. Like, son, he was great. We finally 5 months in with him had it figured out. And our daughter was just like completely different. But we were a little different too, and just we were a
Yeah.
little more relaxed and had some different things that we were doing where it didn't cause the same intense like anxiety and inability to sleep as it did the first time around.
And
Um,
I think that's a huge point that I also put out to families is, really assessing what's working and what's not working, right? And if it is working for your family and it isn't causing a huge sense of anxiety and you guys are in a flow and rhythm that works well, then you don't need to change anything, right?
yeah. What does does a sleep consultant do? Like, what for people out there that are like, wow, how does that work? Like, do I talk to them? Do they come to my house? Like, how do we, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a lot of varying ways that sleep consultants work and how they work with families, whether it's in-home support, whether it's virtual. I think through COVID, a lot of it moved virtually,
Hmm.
and it's probably stayed a lot like that as well. But there are in-home supports that are available. So when I work with families, it's really assessing, it's a I come in with zero agenda other than to understand what the family's sleep goals are. Okay. So understanding what is working for them, what's not working for them. So I will say most commonly families reach out when they hit a bit of a breaking point and they're like, we can't sustain this. We are so exhausted. We are up every hour overnight. I'm having to rock, feed my baby back to sleep, only to have them wake up an hour later. Naps are super crummy. They're like 20 minutes throughout the day. And we can't sustain life in this way anymore. And so my role is to understand, okay, well, what are your sleep goals as a family? What is your ideal sleep situation? And then help educate the parents around their child's sleep needs, how to build that sleep foundation, and then how to introduce those independent sleep skills if that is something that aligns with what they're looking for to help bring those nights together and those naps together for them. So I think the term sleep coaching, sleep training it's a very polarized topic, quite honestly, in society today. You get people on all ends of the spectrum, and
Hmm.
that's really where I come from saying if what you're doing with your sleep situation is working for your family right now, there is no need to change it. If you guys feel, let's say you're rocking your baby to sleep at night and you are all getting the rest you need, you're waking up feeling good, it feels sustainable, you don't need to change that. If, however, you are rocking your baby to sleep and they are waking up every hour and you're saying, well, I want it to work, but it's not working for me, well, then we can make change. Your sleep can be improved. And sleep, like you were saying, is so important, even for your child's growth and development, as well as for yours. So I work with families to really develop a plan that is suitable to their family's goals and their ideal kind of vision of what sleep should look like or what they want it to look like in their home. And I help you reach those goals by developing a plan that feels right for you and your family.
I
I
really
love that you came saying no judgment because you're right. It is, there are different strains of thought all across the map on sleep, and nobody's right or wrong, right? So I love that you're wherever the family is where you're going to meet them. Let me ask you this, Rosalie. So it can be such a huge challenge, and you've already mentioned sleep's kind of polarizing on thoughts. Are there kind of common misconceptions that you see that people have around sleep that's impacting moms?
Yeah, a few that
Okay.
I can think of. And then I'm curious to know what kinds of ones you guys have heard too. So I think one of the biggest one is what I brought earlier, that sleep deprivation is just part of being a parent. So it's almost like it's this rite of passage for parents that like you believe that chronic sleep deprivation is your life and this is what you have to go through and this is what everyone goes through. And while in that newborn phase, yeah, your baby's going to wake up at night. Yeah, sleep is unpredictable. That's normal, right? Newborns, even infants, have small tummies and they will need to wake overnight to feed. That is so normal. Okay. So I think remembering that, okay, sleep is going to look different. Absolutely. But you do not need to be sleep deprived for months or years that are ongoing. And I think that's a
Mhm.
huge misconception that's out there. So even in that newborn phase, you can start shaping sleep, right? You can start building that sleep foundation while still honoring your little one's nutritional needs, right? There's so much that you can do to start working to meet their sleep needs. And as babies grow, that's where you can really start building that foundation more and developing a routine that works for you and your family. So, sleep deprivation is not something that needs to be ongoing in parenthood. So that's kind of the number one misconception. What do you guys think? Is that something that
I,
resonates?
I love that you say that because one of my favorite stats that I think I say way too often is less than 4 hours of sleep is considered a war crime by the United Nations. Like sleep deprivation, that's illegal across the world. It's a war crime. So how do
Yeah.
we expect parents just to live like that ongoing? It's proven it's not okay for your mental health and everything. So I love that you're saying, yes, short term, it makes sense, but it's not a long term. This is how parents should survive. There is a better way.
And I think too, like on like the flip side now, because of, because of social media and just access to more stories, we're able to hear people's experiences with their babies from millions of people, right? Whereas before it would be from friends, your mom, like from people kind of just around you, which is both good and has some negative side effects. The negative one is sometimes when you maybe have just heard all these stories about how your baby was sleeping through the middle of the night when they were 2 weeks old which happens, right? It happens. Did not happen to my children,
Or mine.
but like,
Or mine.
but it does happen. Maybe not by 2 weeks old, but some are like, by 6 weeks old, hey, we got an 8 hour stretch, we got a 12-hour stretch. And for some people, if that is what you've been hearing and you kind of get that as an expectation, then when it doesn't happen, people they do have higher levels of anxiety or like, wait, what's going on? Like, why isn't this working or why aren't they sleeping? Because what you were expecting and then what happened in reality is so mismatched. And I mean, that's for like anything in life when your expectation and reality are very, very off balance. Do you ever encounter parents where they were like, I thought they would be sleeping, or I feel like they should be, or am I like, and kind of second guessing themselves rather than trying to be a little more intuitive with like what they
Yeah,
feel like their baby needs or something?
totally. And that's, I think, another big misconception in a sense that all babies sleep the same way. It's just not the case, right? And I think social media is a bit of a detriment to our mental health in that sense because it's a constant comparison for parents and it's a highlight reel of people's lives, right? Sure, nowadays people are
Moments
being a
of
bit
people's
more,
lives.
sorry.
I said it's the best moments of people's lives.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, exactly. And sure, people are being a little bit more, I suppose, vulnerable, talking about the hardships and all of that. But there's still this element where you're seeing these amazing things on social media. And like you said, it's a misalignment with what's maybe going on for you. And that can create a lot of anxiety. And so thinking that, hey, my neighbor's kid or this girl on social media, this influencer I'm following, her baby is sleeping through the night at 6 months old, and my 6 month old is still up twice a night feeding. Um, Babies are not all the same. They have different sleep needs. We have high sleep needs babies. We have low sleep needs babies. So I've worked with 6 month olds, one that needs 12 hours of sleep overnight and 3.5 hours of daytime sleep, and another 6 month old that needs 10 hours of sleep overnight and 2.5 hours of daytime sleep. There is such a wide range. And so if you're trying to fit your baby into the sleep needs of another baby that you're seeing on social media or next door, well, then you're not actually setting your child up for successful sleep if that's not what they need. And you're setting yourself up for a lot of struggles, right? If your baby doesn't need 12 hours overnight, but you're trying to force them to sleep 12 hours overnight, everyone's going to be having a crappy time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's going to be challenging. And so, really just taking a step back and saying, okay, this is what I'm seeing, this is what we're living. Maybe my baby needs something different. Okay. And I want to figure that out. And we will figure it out. Okay. It is possible. But taking a step back from that comparison game, which is a lot easier said than done.
yeah. No, and I think a lot of it too, it almost sounds like, when I'm working with clients, we talk a lot about, things in our control and out of our control, and also things we can influence. And baby sleep is kind of like that, right? Like you can't control the child you have, the child you
Mhm.
actually have. They have needs that are all their own, and that's okay. And there are things, though, if what's going on because of their needs is that parents aren't sleeping or things are very inconsistent and you're struggling to figure out like a routine and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, well, there are things you can influence, right? You can't make your baby
Yeah.
want to sleep 16 hours if they don't need 16
Hmm.
hours, but you could help influence them to get like bigger chunks or to help it be a little more, balanced out, or help them sleep longer stretches or something like that at night so that people are getting rest. Um,
Totally. And
yeah.
that's something I love telling families is you cannot force a baby or a child to sleep. You can't.
Oh
You
yeah.
can, however, set them up for success. You can get the timing right. You can build a proper sleep foundation. You can make sure that all of those puzzle pieces of baby sleep, nutrition, environment, wake windows, sleep pressure, all of those are properly aligned, but we can't force them to sleep, right? So there is a lot in your power that you can do to set them up for successful sleep, right? And when they're set up for successful sleep, sleep becomes a whole lot easier for them and for you. So I love what you just said there. Yeah, I think
So,
it's
Rosalie, could you
100% on
expand?
point.
I know each one of those things that you just mentioned, the sleep windows, the sleep environment, the foundation, all of those, I'm sure, are hours and hours long presentations that you could work with moms. So, this is kind of an unfair question, but are there any generic or general tips or small things that parents could do that you could suggest that they try as they're kind of going through, that newborn phase or even into toddlerhood as babies changes, their needs are changing?
Yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right that each of those things is a big, big topic in
Yes.
itself, but let's get into a few of them. I'll try and keep it simple and manageable, little bite-sized things that families could maybe start working on if they're feeling a bit overwhelmed with sleep and wondering where to start. Um, so first things for babies, I'd say whether it's newborn, whether it's infant, whether it's toddler, one of the first pieces to help get more successful sleep is getting the timing right. Okay, whether it's for daytime sleep or bedtime. When the timing is off, it's going to be hard for your baby to fall asleep, whether it's falling asleep in the stroller, in the car, in the carrier, whether you're rocking them to sleep, or whether you're putting them into their crib for them to fall asleep independently. If the timing is wrong, it's going to be challenging for them. Okay, so what I mean by that is I'm sure a lot of families have heard, especially if they're in that initial kind of postpartum period and as their children grow, the term awake window. Okay, so wake window is simply the time that your child is awake between two sleeps. And that time is going to grow as your child grows. So, developmentally, as your child gets older, they are going to need more awake time to build up their sleep pressure so that they can then fall asleep easily and have a good sleep afterwards. Okay, so that timing is crucial. If you are putting your baby down, let's say you have a 6 month old, and the ballpark window there to start is around 2.5 hours of awake time, for example. Let's say you're putting them down at an hour and a half. Your baby is going to be undertired and they are going to fight that sleep. If you try putting them down in their crib, they are going to cry to let you know, hey, I'm not tired yet. What am I doing here? Get me out of here. Right? They're going to communicate to you that they're not ready for sleep. And so you might be trying to rock them to sleep and you're like, my baby hates sleep. They keep fighting it. Well, the timing is wrong. So we need to work on increasing those wake windows. Okay. On the flip side, if let's say that wake window ballpark is about 2.5 hours for your child and you're putting them down at 3.5 hours, they're going to be overtired. And an overtired child, their body is saying, hey, let me help keep you awake. So I'm going to release some cortisol, I'm going to release some adrenaline, and I'm going to help keep you awake. And they're going to have a really hard time settling to sleep at that point. And you'll likely see really short sleeps afterwards. So the first piece for parents, I would say, is look at the timing, understand the timing, and get the timing right for sleeps for your child. On my website, and I think I've provided you guys with the link, I've got a lot of free resources, one of which is the wake windows by age and understanding that
Okay.
timing of naps and bedtimes and things like that for your child. So that can be helpful for parents as well.
We will
Okay.
include that link in the show notes. So just scroll down, it's in the show notes. You can go right there and get it from Rosalie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And it's so important when you start noticing and being aware of these things with your child because like you said, I mean, it changes so quickly over time. And like we even just found out my son just started kindergarten this year and he had been going to bed at like 8:30 most nights. Like he slowly crept up because at preschool sometimes they would still let him lay down and rest and it was a little lower mental load for him throughout the day.
Mhm.
Well, he started kindergarten and all of a sudden at like 6:45, 7, he's like falling asleep in the chair. And we were like, oh my gosh, okay. Yay for us. He's gonna go to bed early. But kids know, like depending on what they're doing, their development,
Yes.
like what their day looks like, even a couple days apart sometimes, depending on what they're doing, they might need to adjust like when they go to sleep, and that's okay. And it's so hard. And I mean, I feel for, well, for myself too, because I'm still in it with my 2-year old, but it's so hard as a parent to be like, well, no, like the past 3 days, it was perfect. And they went to bed and slept so well. Like, what
Mhm.
was different about today? Why isn't it working? And you get so worked up. And sometimes I'm like, sometimes you just have to say, this is the reality that I'm in, and wishing that it was different so hard that I'm getting like frustrated and anxious. Like, I'm just doing that to myself right now. And
Yeah.
it's hard because you, with kids, when sometimes when things work, you celebrate. And then when they don't, you suddenly drop back down to the bottom and you're like, oh my gosh, like what did I do wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I like to remind families of is baby sleep, toddler sleep, preschooler sleep. It's not linear. Our kids are humans. They're kids. They're not robots. They are going to
Mhm.
have good nights. They are going to have bad nights. Even if you had the most amazing sleeper, they are still going to hit bumps along the way. Kids that are sleep trained still hit bumps along the way. They are kids. It is normal. And I think our initial instinct, 100%, like you said, is what did I do wrong? And I always get parents to just take a deep breath and reframe that, because it's not necessarily something that you did wrong at all. It is our kids growing up. It is our kids developing. It is our kids having super stimulating days at school, at daycare. There are so many factors that will impact sleep. And I think remembering that sleep isn't linear can be really helpful and grounding for parents, and knowing that it's normal to have those bumpy nights. Sometimes it's bumpy weeks, right? So just knowing that you're not alone in that. So timing, the other thing is that's pretty two more simple kind of things that parents
Yes.
could work on to help improve
Love
that
this.
sleep. Sleep environment is something that is easy for parents to kind of set up. So we just want to make sure that the room is as dark as possible and quiet and of a comfortable temperature. Okay. Um, Third one, simple bedtime routine. I know this one can actually feel really overwhelming for families. And I've told the my community before to see what was the biggest thing holding them back from
Mhm.
implementing a bedtime routine. And the most common reason was that it felt like too much. It felt too complex to people. And so, what I want to remind families is that a bedtime routine, you're probably already doing a lot of the steps that I recommend without knowing it. And two, it is not meant to be complex. It is not meant to overwhelm you. It is simply meant to set the stage, prepare your child's body and mind that sleep is coming, prepare them for rest. Okay. The most important thing is that it is enjoyable and that it is not a stressful time for your family. It's a wonderful time for connection, for bonding. Okay. So remember that as we're going through this. So, some of the simple steps that I recommend first, you can try dimming the lights in your home. Maybe it's turning down the overhead lights and turning on a side lamp. It's a very simple visual cue for your little one. And as they grow, they're going to start to associate that with, hey, there's a change in the day. There's something happening here. Okay. Then maybe you offer a top up feed, a last feed of the day to make sure their tummy is nice and full before going to bed, but they have a bit of time to digest that milk before being laid down. Maybe you do a warm bath. That can be really relaxing for little ones. Caveat to that, if it is not relaxing for your baby, if it is not relaxing for you, if that one feels like too much work, cut it out. You don't need to do a bath every night. Okay. I know that one really uh, stresses people out the most. So if you don't want to do a bath, if it doesn't work for your family, if you'd rather do the bath in the morning or every 3 days, whatever, you could do a warm washcloth. Okay. Do something simple that still kind of indicates to your child, hey, there's a change coming. Okay. Maybe then you go to the bedroom, you could do a little massage, or you put on that diaper, you get pajamas on. Maybe you read a story, maybe you just sing a song and have a cuddle. Okay. Then you could turn on some white noise, turn the lights off. So, like I said, that bedtime routine that I described, chances are you guys are already doing 50, 75% of what I listed there. Okay. Again, the point is just to build in some predictable steps for your little ones so they start to learn that, hey, this leads to this leads to this, and then it's time to go to sleep, and prepares them for bedtime.
And it
Did you
sounds
guys
like,
have bedtime routines?
yeah, well, and I was gonna say it sounds like one of the most important things that I always told myself was just kind of consistency. So like whatever the
Yeah.
routine was, just make it to where we could do it wherever, right? If we're visiting family, it's just kind of the same order of events. And we did. It was interesting when we had our second, and my husband and I both were like, well, wait, how do we have two bedtime routines now, or what does that look like? And we struggled for a while until we figured out a way to combine them.
Mhm.
And literally, though, just recently have we really started to combine them. Again, my kids are 2 and 5. And so now instead of each person having to go through a whole bedtime routine with each kid, they'll do baths like one right after the other. We do books together. We kind of lay
Yeah.
together and like
Amazing.
cuddle. And then like everybody goes to bed. And that's been from the past couple of months, has started feeling easier than each
Yeah.
person doing this whole divide and conquer strategy, because it's hard when you start having multiples and then there's three or you have four kids. You can't necessarily have like this individual,
No.
right? Bedtime will last hours.
Totally. It's the entire afternoon. Like,
know? It's like with your family, what works? Like what can you combine? Like
exactly.
what feels good for everyone? And
Exactly.
yeah, I really love how in the beginning you were talking about like what feels good for your family, because I think a lot of people, they look to things to say, okay, well, that works for them, so I'll just do that. And then when it doesn't work, or you're kind of internally like, I don't know, like this doesn't seem like a
Totally.
good fit for me. So a lot of times we ignore that and we don't
Yes.
pay attention to ourselves and trust ourselves to say like, hey, I think that this might be like, I could try this, or this feels good, or this doesn't feel good. And sometimes when we really pay attention and then we do what works with our kids and what works for us, it's like a little bit of magic. So,
Totally. Yeah, I think that's so important that, yeah, it needs to work for your family. Same thing as we were talking about with like sleep needs and stuff. We can't be fitting into a mold of someone else. It's got to be really what works for you and your family as a unit. And I just want to say, I loved what you said about the bedtime routine being portable. That is one of
Yeah.
when I work with families, I think a lot of people worry that, hey, if I make changes to my child's sleep, if I were to sleep train them, for example, sleep is going to be rigid. It's not going to be flexible anymore. We're not going to be able to do the things we want to do. And it is the complete opposite, really. My goal is to bring flexibility to people's lives. And the bedtime routine is the most beautiful, portable thing that really, wherever you are in the world, whichever situation you're in, it's a routine that you can take with you and it will always indicate to your child that sleep is coming. So I think it's a really beautiful thing to incorporate at an early age if you can.
So this is all such great tips that if you're at home, have not tried, try working some of this into your bedtime routine, that you're going to try some different things and add to. And Rosalie, I feel like even with a 2.5-year-old, some of this is just great tips to say you can do this. But I think you just saying it's not linear, this will change, kind of removing those expectations makes me feel better as a mom. Are there any other feedback you have for kind of moms letting go of unrealistic expectations that they are putting on their child for sleep?
Oh, yeah. I don't know about you guys. When I'm just thinking back to even like my postpartum period, I went through a phase, and I know a lot of families that I work with also kind of have this timing. We had our second when our first was two, and that transition was rather tough. I would find the nights really, really hard. I also found myself offering feeds, scrolling social media. And so I was not only comparing myself to people during the day, but it was
Mhm.
also constant input overnight. And that really impacted me. And so I just want to reiterate, if you notice that when you are, let's say, on social media, or even if you're talking to a friend and the information that's being input you find is a bit triggering or just heightens that anxiety for you around your situation, just taking note of that. Um, and taking a moment to reassess, okay, well, what is helpful for us? What is not helpful? What is working
Mhm.
for us? What is not working for us? And if you feel like something is not working, then knowing that there is support, you can get help. There are lots of people out there that can support you through this phase of parenthood. So I think really reducing challenging that comparison that you're doing, and redefining what success might look like for your family. I think that's a really big one as well. So for some families, they want their little one to start sleeping through the night with no night feeds. Okay, that's how they're going to define it. For other families, they want to have two night feeds, but they'd like some consolidated sleep in there, not waking up every hour, right? Okay, so that's going to be their measurement of success. For other families, it's, well, they'd really like to do naps on the go. And so for them, because they want to go out, they want to go for coffee, they want to go to different classes, well, then for them, success might look like an awesome nap in the stroller. So really redefining success for your family as a unit, I think is important. Yeah.
That is so great. And I think your point of there are people out there who could help you is key. So, Rosalie, if people are listening and they want to reach out to you to find more information or to talk with you for sleep support, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is probably going through my website. You can book a call there and we can just jump on the phone and talk about, again, what your goals as a family are so that I can understand. I always like having that initial touch point first, simply because I want to make sure I actually can help you, right? And if I feel that I can't help you, then I redirect you to the correct professional that I think would be able to help you and your situation. So, really, feel free to reach out. You can book a call, you can email me, you can reach out via Instagram, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever feels easiest to you if you need some support and some help.
Yeah, we'll make sure to include all those links and everything down in the show notes. Rosalie, this has been so great. I think that there's so much to like some of the skills that you've talked about when you're working on them for yourself as a family and with your baby, like when they're little. Those same things though can apply to all aspects of parenthood when it comes to like being flexible, and learning that not everything is going to be the same every day and getting into that mindset. I mean, that is something that's going to be helpful until, well, forever, basically, through teenage years, adolescence, like all of that. And so
Yeah.
setting up those good foundations, like it's not just about sleep. I think that the skills you're teaching people are going to be able to affect like their parenting for years.
Yeah, it's funny actually that you say that. It's very true, and I noticed that it comes up in conversation a lot more even as we target. I think there's back to the misconceptions that a lot of parents feel like it's too late to make change when their kid reaches 2, 3, 4, whatever. That, oh no, this is how it's going to be, and we've got to kind of keep it this way. The strategies that we use for older kids are drastically different than the strategies we use for infants for supporting sleep, right? And so in those toddler years, often I work with families and they say, we had this wonderful sleeper, our bedtime routine was 30 minutes, and now our bedtime routine has become 2 hours of negotiations and power struggles. And it's like, well, yeah, your kid's developing really normally, actually. And so our strategies are really to work on daytime strategies first before we even tackle the nighttime. And I tell parents that our role as a parent, isn't necessarily to fix everything, but we need to be kind of that strong and sturdy leader, and we need to help our little ones work through their feelings, and guide them correctly. And so, really, a lot of what we do, the work we do together, are skills and strategies that, like you said, can absolutely be carried into our later parenthood
Yeah.
stages.
This has just been so great. And I think you're right. If we can keep learning, I was just thinking all the skills that I need to learn with having a 2.5-year-old is very different at the beginning. I can't
Yeah.
even imagine how it's going to continue to change. So it's great to know that we have access to someone like you who can kind of help guide us through from the parent side so that we do it the least inconvenient, the least stressful for us when we're already stressed with a lot of things about parenting. So thank you for what you are doing. Thank you for the tips and the support that you've come on and given our moms and just in general for helping so many of us sleep so much better. Thank you.
Oh, Well, thank you both so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a really fun conversation and an important one, I think. So hopefully it helps those parents out there, if anything, to know that you're not alone, and that if things aren't working, you can make change.
Absolutely, Rosalie. Thank you so much. There are so many great tips that she just walked us through. And I think just bringing it back to yes, it's important for your baby to sleep for your baby. But if you're sleep deprived and as a mom, if you're not sleeping, it's very, very hard to support your own mental health. It's also kind of a catalyst to a lot of anxiety and depression if you're not sleeping. So these tips are things that are so great for your child, but also so great for your mental health as
Yeah.
a mom because you've got to be able to sleep. And
Yeah.
yes, it's hard at the beginning, but it does get better.
It does get better. And I love just how just generally kind of encouraging and positive she is. It's not one of those things where it's somebody saying like, you have to do this and everyone has to do this. This is more like, see what fits for your family, what fits for your schedule. Everybody's families are different. The needs of every
Mm.
baby and child and toddler and adolescent are different. And so feeling like it's very empowering to know that like you can figure this out for your family and design something that is supportive of your family's needs. I just really love that. That's a really warm way of working with people.
Great. And I think it was good for me, everything you just said, and the fact to remember it's not linear. Just like
Mhm.
everything in life, if your child isn't sleeping for a couple days in a row, it's not always going to be like this. So
Yeah.
reminding and giving yourself that grace that sleep training is not linear. It's up and
Yeah.
down, and you're still building a great foundation.
Yeah, because I mean, we as adults, like, we don't have consistent sleep, right? So, like, why
No,
would anyone else just because they're younger?
exactly. Well, Ashley and I, are sending you all a lot of love and hope that some of these tips are helpful to you as you're trying to get more sleep, supporting your child's sleep. And as we've mentioned, we've included all the information for Rosalie in the show notes. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We will see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please be sure to hit subscribe, leave us your feedback, and give us a 5-star review. For even more support, visit us at wethrivepostpartum.com/podcast to sign up for our newsletter and learn more about our community. Remember, you are not alone. With support, you can feel better. Together, let's thrive postpartum.